title of my presentation is called Calculating Communists, which there's an article with the same name in the May 16th issue of the New American Magazine that just came out on Monday. If you're a JPS member, you probably maybe already got it in the mail. If not, hopefully that really is in the mailbox. So let's just get right into it. So on December 25th of 1991, as millions around the West were celebrating Christmas, that same day, Mikhail Gorbachev resigned from the presidency of the Soviet Union, and the red banner flag of the USSR was lowered for the last time over the Kremlin, and the new tricolor flag of the modern Russian Federation went up. The following day, the briefly renamed Soviet of Republics, formerly known as the Soviet of Nationalities, this is actually the highest legislative body that existed in the Soviet Union. They, on December 26, officially dissolved the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So the last official day of the USSR was December 26 of 1991, having officially come into existence on, in the year 1922 following the 1917 revolution. So that in less than 48 hours, Gorbachev leaves the presidency, the Soviet flag comes down, the new Russian flag comes up, and the Soviet Union officially ceases to exist. Then, in the fall of 1991, the Russian president at the time, Boris Yeltsin, signed a series of decrees that officially banned the Communist Party of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. And this was the Republican-level Communist Party of the Soviet Union, because, of course, being the Soviet Union, there were multiple nations that made up the Soviet Union. Like you have the Soviet Republic of Belarus, the Soviet Republic of Ukraine, the Soviet Republic of Abkhazia, and so forth. And Russia was, of course, one of the Soviet republics, and their Communist Party was officially abolished by President Yeltsin in 1991. So to many in the West, this was a time when many said, oh, communism is dead, the Cold War is over, there's no longer a communist threat, we've finally won the Cold War, so all you anti-commies, you can just go back to sleep because there's nothing to worry about here. However, on February 14 of 1993, those who still believed in Lenin's revolution, they formed a new party in Russia called the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, also known as the CPRF. And the person who is the general secretary of the CPRF is this man here named Gennady Zyuganov. Now, Gennady Zyuganov, in case you're wondering who this person is, he still remains the general secretary of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation since the year 1993. He's also an elected member of the State Duma. The State Duma is the lower chamber of Russia's Federal Assembly, the equivalent of the House of Representatives. So he's a leader, so he's a member of the State Duma, Russia's House of Representatives, the leader of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, and he's still leading that today. In fact, he's also the leader of the communist faction of all the communists in the Duma. Well, a little bit of background on him. He was the head propagandist for a regional committee of the CPSU back in the 80s, and then he became deputy head of the ideological department, so the #2 highest ranking ideologue in the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in the 1980s, and he was also an outspoken critic of Gorbachev's perestroika and glasnost reforms. So while Gorbachev was sort of softening the USSR, giving it more of a democratic, friendly face and moving towards a multi-party state, Zaganov wanted to keep the USSR the same way that it had been under Brezhnev. And even today, he's actually an apologist for Joseph Stalin, writing books and giving speeches how great Stalin was and so forth. In fact, he's also been a presidential candidate in multiple Russian presidential elections, including the 1996 election against Boris Yeltsin. He ran against Putin in 2000, 2008, and 2012, and he always comes in second place. He's considered the leader of the opposition in Russia. So supposedly, if not Putin, this would be the guy in power of Russia. So, but when you think about opposition leaders in Russia, so many of them either go missing, they get killed off, they get poisoned. A lot of things happen when you're an enemy of Putin, especially opposing him from the other side of the spectrum, if you will, but not Zaganov. He always remains the last man standing. In fact, he not only is the last man standing, he's actually had regular meetings with President Putin, regularly goes to his office, sits down with Putin. He really has the ear of Putin. They'll have video conferences together. So, you know, clearly Zaganov is Putin's designated or approved challenger for Russia's staged political elections. He provides sort of a faux legitimacy. By having Zaganov as the opposition, that makes Putin look like he's a non-communist or even an anti-communist because he's not a member of the Communist Party. Putin has his own party called United Russia, and Zaganov's the guy on the other side of the aisle, so to speak. But do those individuals look like opponents? Do they look like enemies? Or do they look more like friends? These are all photos actually from the official Kremlin website from the Russian government. In fact, Putin is a huge fan of Zaganov. In addition to holding those one-on-one meetings together with Zaganov, Putin has frequently showered Zaganov with a ton of gifts and awards. For example, on June 26th of 2019, on Zaganov's 75th birthday, Putin presented him with a framed picture of the Palace of Congress and a copy of the book Materials of the 23rd Congress of the Communist Party of the USSR. So here you have Putin, the leader of the United Russia Party, the leader of the Russian country, giving the leader of the Communist Party communist literature. In addition to that, 10 years earlier, on the 65th birthday of Zaganov, the Communist Party leader in Russia, Putin gave him a special commemorative copy of the Manifesto of the Communist Party by Marx and Engels. And in this photo here, the individual on the left who is shaking hands with Gennady Zyuganov is a man named Vyacheslav Volodin. And Vyacheslav Volodin is the chairman of the State Duma. That's the equivalent of the Speaker of the House of Representatives for Russia. And he's a member of of Putin's party, United Russia, this Volodin figure. And this is what Volodin said about Zaganov a few years back. He said, United Russia, of course, Putin's party, United Russia loves you. If with such opponents, United Russia has the majority, then such opponents must be protected. I mean, what kind of opposition is this when you have the leader of Putin's party saying about Zaganov, who represents the alternative or opposition Communist Party, you know, if opponents like you, with us being in the majority, we have to protect a guy like you. What does that say? It says that ideologically, they're really on the same page. In fact, TASS, which is the Russian state news media apparatus, they interviewed Zaganov when he was receiving one of the various awards that Putin has given him. And in this interview where TASS went to Zaganov's house, the reporter from TASS asked Zaganov, what's your relationship like with Putin? Because you're always meeting with him. And Zaganov says, oh, it's a normal working relationship. You know, we get along pretty well. But then he starts to tout about the fact, he says this to the reporter, by the way, he always calls if I call him. So you know, Zaganov is gloating about the fact that he's got the ear of Putin. Even if Putin misses his phone call, Putin will always be sure to call Zaganov back to make sure he didn't miss anything important. And of course, that interview is available on TASS's website from June 26, 2019. It's all in Russian, but you can use like an extension on Google Chrome to have it translated if you want and read the full interview online. But on the 70th birthday of Zaganov, on June 26, 2014, Putin announced that he was awarding Gennady Zyuganov with an award known as the Order of Alexander Nevsky. And this is why Putin said he was giving the award to Zaganov for his, quote, achieved labor success. Now think about the Communist Party in America, the CPUSA. They operate closely within the labor movement here in the US. So Putin is awarding Zaganov for his achieved labor success, for his significant contribution to the socio-economic development of the Russian Federation. In other words, redistributive economics. It's still going on. Yeah, the Soviet Union fell, but the economic system hasn't really changed that much. And for the implementation of the foreign policy course of the Russian Federation. So you would think that maybe Putin's Ministry of Foreign Relations would be in charge of that. No. He says that Zaganov has been setting the foreign policy course of the Russian Federation, and he awarded him for that in 2014. So this begs a very important question, which is, what exactly is Zaganov's foreign policy, and how does that fit in with Ukraine, or how does Ukraine fit into it? So this photo right here is actually a photo of the 28th Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. Now, most people who studied the Soviet Union, Sovietologists as they were called, back when that was a field of study in college, they may be familiar with the 28th Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, which was held in Moscow on July 2nd through July 13th of 1990. They would recognize it as being the last official Congress or conference of the CPSU before they officially ceased to exist. Now, notice that I keep saying official and officially. Well, that's because unofficially, or at least not publicly publicized, there was another Congress, the 29th Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. It was actually held on March 26th and 27th. And this really bad photo here that actually belongs to Sputnik News, this is the only known photo, at least that I could find, even searching using Cyrillic, the Russian language online. This is the only photo I could find of this conference. And it occurred on March 26th through 27th, 2 days, in 1993. And there were 370 delegates from 11 of the former Soviet republics. They gathered in Moscow at the 29th Congress of the CPSU. Now remember, this USSR officially stopped to exist, officially, December 26, 1991. And then and by this point, 1993, both the Communist Party of the Soviet Union and the Russian Soviet-level Communist Party were officially abolished. Yet, they had a conference for the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, which supposedly didn't exist anymore. Well, what happened at this conference? Well, it was at this conference that they decided to create, this is what they say, an international socio-political organization. Because now that the USSR doesn't exist officially, all these other countries like Belarus, Kazakhstan, Abkhazia, Ukraine, these are all now independent nations. So the communist parties within those other countries are no longer under Moscow. So we have to keep that glue together. So this is the logo here for the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, the CPSU. At that venue, at the 29th Congress in 1993, they officially rebranded themselves as the UCP-CPSU, which stands in English for the Union of Communist Parties, Communist Party of the Soviet Union. And this lives on today as the official international banner for all of the communist parties that operate within the former Soviet republics. So the Communist Party of Russia is part of this, the Communist Party of Belarus is part of this, the Communist Party of Abkhazia, and a bunch of other former Soviet republics belong to this international apparatus. And who is in charge of the UCP-CPSU? Our friend, surprise, surprise, Gennady Zyuganov. He is the leader of both the Russian Communist Party, the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, and also of the Union of Communist Parties, Communist Party of the Soviet Union. He's actually the chairman of the Central Committee of the UCP-CPSU. This document here, which is in Cyrillic, of course, for an extension, you could, on Google Chrome, you can make it into English, but this document is called the Declaration of the Communist Parties within the UCP-CPSU. It sort of states what the party believes in as a whole, what their beliefs are, and what their goals are. And this is a direct quote from it. It says, integration, as in integration of the former Soviet republics, needs to ensure the creation of the customs union of Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Russia, the Eurasian Economic Community, and the Collective Security Treaty Organization. So these international organizations, which Alex Newman mentioned earlier, he mentioned the Eurasian Economic Union. These are some of the earlier names of that. But according to the declaration of all the communist parties that are part of the UCP, CPSU, they have to work. Their goal of all the communist parties in Russia is to integrate all of the former Soviet Union into one political economic bloc. And they go on to say, the cause of building the Union State, this new Union State that they're building, must be taken up by the working people, the fraternal communist parties, that's all the communist parties of the former Soviet republics that operate today, and all the patriots of the Soviet motherland. This is their primary objective. This is why they still exist after the supposed fall of communism, to make sure that communism hasn't fallen and that it continues to live on and that it continues to integrate the former Soviet Union back up again. And right now we have this organization, the Eurasian Economic Union, the EAEU. Now, a little bit of history about this. So the customs union of Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Russia that was mentioned in that declaration, that began with a series of treaties back in 1995 to integrate the former Soviet republics following their official breakup in '91. The various treaties culminated with the official establishment of something called the Customs Union of Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Russia in 2010. The Eurasian Economic Community, which was also mentioned in that declaration, that officially rebranded or renamed itself as currently known as the Eurasian Economic Union. And it's regarded by both Zaganov and Putin as an attempt to not only further economically integrate Russia and its neighbors in some sort of EU-style framework like the European Union, but they claim that it's to restore the territorial integrity of what was once the USSR. So maybe you're starting to see how Ukraine fits into this, considering that Ukraine was part of the USSR. So the UCP-CPSU's primary objective is for communists to lead and control the Eurasian Economic Union, thereby at some future point reestablishing the Soviet Union without a revolution, without blood being shed, because they're going to do it with all these treaties, and then they hope to get elected into power. So at some future point, when Putin is not in charge of Russia, maybe Gennady Zyuganov, maybe some other member of the Russian Communist Party may succeed him officially. But until then, this is what the communists are working on. In fact, Gennady Zyuganov, he addressed the importance of the Eurasian Economic Union, that Putin is working so hard to negotiate with his neighboring counterparts. Gennady Zaganov said this while he was at the State National Press Center of Belarus in Minsk, in the capital city, on July 19, 2016. He said, "The destruction of the USSR led to the collapse of a balanced global system of world security." Oh my goodness, how terrible. So the integration of the post-Soviet space is a vital necessity. Therefore, in connection with the creation of a fraternal state, the Eurasian Union, we have extremely important prospects. Our task, and that of future generations, is to realize them. So Zaganov there at a press conference in Belarus says, our purpose, our objective, is to bring back the USSR in the form of this new Eurasian Economic Union. In fact, Zaganov is a friend with that man over there. That man there on the left is Alexander Lukashenko, the dictator, the so-called ruling president of Belarus. In fact, when Belarus officially broke off the Soviet Union and became an independent country, this person who was formerly a member of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, Lukashenko, became the president, has won every election in wide majorities, like 99+%, something like that. And if you believe the official propaganda from Belarus, that's what they claim, that he gets all this support, despite the fact there's millions and thousands of people that protest against him. But nevertheless, he wins with like 90% of the vote, and he's buddy-buddy friends with Zaganov. In fact, in Belarus, in their Congress, there are only two parties. One is Lukashenko's official puppet party that obviously does everything he says, and then there is the other party, the one alternative party, the Communist Party of Belarus, which is a member of the Union of Communist Parties, Communist Party of the Soviet Union that Zaganov leads. And the alternative party, the Communist Party of Belarus, they don't oppose Lukashenko in any way. They're considered a pro-Lukashenko party. They strongly are in favor of him. So Lukashenko has the full support of the communists within and without Belarus. In fact, there's even news reports coming out about how Russia and Belarus are calling for all the former Soviet republics that aren't yet fully on board, that they have to, they have to get on the old Soviet train here and form the USSR through a new customs union, the Eurasian Economic Union. So how exactly does Ukraine fit into this mess? Well, in eastern Ukraine, you have the Donbass region, and you have these two breakaway republics that Putin claims that he's fighting for their national sovereignty and their right of self-determination, which is what the communists always talk about, the right of self-determination for the rebel groups that they support. Well, actually, a week before Putin went on national TV and said that he was going to launch the special military operation in Ukraine, he spoke with French President Macron and with the German Chancellor Scholz and told them that, that he is officially recognizing those breakaway republics as independent nation states, and that as a result of this recognition, Russia's recognition that those are legitimate countries, Russia's going to defend their sovereignty, just like we might if China invaded Taiwan and all of a sudden we say, oh, we recognize Taiwan's national sovereignty and we defend them. That's sort of what Putin is using in his rhetoric to justify his war. So that's what Putin is doing. But remember how I mentioned that Zaganov was awarded for setting the foreign policy course of the Russian Federation? Well, a month before this invasion, and this was reported in various communist websites that report on what's going on in Russia. This one article here in a website in defense of communism, which they translate this article from TASS, which is the Russian state news agency. They report in the article here. This was back in January 23rd, 2022. The Communist Party of the Russian Federation, CPRF faction in the State Duma, and its leader, Gennady Zyuganov, on Wednesday submitted to the Duma a draft message from the lower house to President Vladimir Putin for the recognition of the Donetsk and Lugansk self-proclaimed republics. The draft was uploaded to the State Duma's electronic database. As follows from the draft, the communists want the State Duma to address the head of state, which is Vladimir Putin, quote, with a request for considering the recognition of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Lugansk People's Republic as independent and sovereign states. So Zaganov essentially told Putin, you need to do this. This is what you should do. This is what I'm telling you to do. A month later, Putin does it. In fact, the following day, after Russian tanks and troops had made their way into Ukraine, this is what Zaganov said in the Russian State Duma. He said, quote, only demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine can ensure lasting security for the peoples of Russia, Ukraine, and the whole of Europe. We consider it important to make wide use of the methods of people diplomacy and humanitarian cooperation in protecting peace and preventing the resurgence of fascism. In fact, Zaganov has delivered a lot of speeches within the Duma praising Putin, supporting the Russian troops for what they're doing. In fact, even on Victory Day, which happened earlier this month when Russia celebrates their defeat of Nazi Germany, Zaganov was speaking praises of the Russian troops right now that are in Ukraine. And of course, Zaganov's group that he leads, the Union of Communist Parties, Communist Party of the Soviet Union, they received all these messages that they collected. They put them on the website of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, the CPRF website, and this was in Russian, but here are some of the messages of solidarity from the various different communist parties. One here reads, the time is long overdue for Russia to establish justice and peace on earth. With its strong hand in the current situation, the Communist Party of Armenia expresses its solidarity and support, and we are confident that the Russian Federation is acting in the interests of justice, peace, and friendship between the fraternal peoples. Then this one here from the Communist Party of Abkhazia, they say, the Russian army once again acts as an army, a liberator from the plague of fascism, sacrificing itself, showing true heroism, protecting and liberating the civilian population. The Russian army honorably fulfills the task assigned to it, Down with the streams of lies and disinformation. Long live the liberation war of the peoples of the Donbass. That's what the Communist Party of Abkhazia is saying, supporting Putin's war. And then the Communist Party of Kyrgyzstan, they said, recently the imperialist collectivist West, led by the United States, has openly set the Ukrainian authorities against Russia, supplying it with modern weapons and finances. In an aggressive frenzy, Bandera began to demand that they be allowed to use nuclear weapons under these conditions in order to eliminate the threat to the security of peoples from the side of the newly minted supporters of Nazism and their patrons. The operation of military coercion to abandon the aggressive course is a necessary measure. So it's necessary that the Russians stop the evil imperialist West. So that's what all the different communist parties are saying in support. In fact, in August of 1991, so this would be several months before the Communist Party and the Soviet Union officially dissolved, right? Mikhail Gorbachev said about the USSR, there can be no union without Ukraine. And I think that's a very important quote to if you want to understand where Putin's coming from, why he's doing what he's doing, and why Zaganov is doing what he's doing as well. It's because they want the Union back. They want the old Soviet Union back. And from their perspective, they cannot achieve that without Ukraine. So I just want to leave with saying that those of us here who are conservatives, who are patriotic, who are trying to fight the deep state, we shouldn't fall for the trap of thinking that because Putin's fighting against the interests of George Soros and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and what all these folks want, that must mean that Putin's good. Because if Putin's fighting Biden and I'm against Biden, then Putin must also be good, right? No, false. That's wrong. That's totally wrong. If you believe that Putin is a good guy, you're actually falling for the very trap of the communists into supporting Putin, who's trying to rebuild the USSR. So regarding the question of where does Putin stand, he stands with the communists. And that's an official photo of him with his dearly beloved friend, Gennady Zyuganov. Most of what I covered is in the May 16 issue of the New American Magazine. We got those in the back for those of you that are interested. Thank you so much for your time. Hope that was educational. Thank you. God bless.